Welcome to our online Sunday experience and our November teaching series, How to Be Ordinary, Cultivating a Life of Depth and Simplicity Without Feeling Like a Failure. It's a practical 5-week series exploring the spiritual disciplines of solitude, silence, prayer, simplicity, and stability. The message you're about to hear was recorded live, and we hope it inspires you to join God in the renewal of all things.
Well, this morning we continue our series about how to be ordinary, cultivating a life of depth and simplicity without feeling like a failure. And so far we've talked about how solitude makes room for God to speak. We explored how silence makes room for us to listen. And last week we unpacked how prayer changes us and makes us more like Jesus. And now this week, we're going to spend some time in the spiritual discipline of simplicity, which we could say makes room for us to love God and one another. Now, simplicity here becomes this pivot point because solitude, silence, and prayer cultivate this inward reality that now blossoms into this outward reality that we can call simplicity. Now, check this out. World-class industrial designer Dieter Rams summarizes this idea of simplicity and defines it as follows: less, but better. So for Rams, he used this mantra to design a whole bunch of different things: coffee pots and furniture and electronics and razor blades. But for you and I, as followers of Jesus, this same approach applies: less but better, because it concentrates on the essentials and brings us back to a purity of purpose. And that inner reality has the most influence on our outer reality, on who we are, on what we do, when we speak, where we go, why we get up in the morning. So with that in mind this morning, I'm going to bring us in on a bit of a deep dive into simplicity. And after that, Allison's going to be up via video to give you some practical tools in how you can explore this spiritual discipline for yourself. So as we begin this morning, let's start in the best place possible, the words of Jesus. Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in nor steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. But strive first for the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." First thing first. Jesus is giving us a pro tip on how to order our lives, which is interesting because if you've been around Lakeview for a while, you'll know that one of the ways that we have defined or described sin is that things are being out of order, out of whack. Jesus is talking about order. So with great clarity, Jesus teaches that everything hinges on being in its proper order, beginning with keeping the first thing, meaning nothing must come before God's designs for you or for me or for this world. Any other configuration of values and goals, any other ranking of authority, any other source for meaning and purpose in life sets everything out of order. And if it's out of order, according to Jesus, then it won't last. It will be lost. Now, with that in mind, let's just clear something up very quickly. Let me tell you what Jesus is not saying here. Jesus is not saying that all possessions or all the things that you enjoy are bad. Again, that is not what Jesus is saying. That is a different ideology. And the fancy word for that is asceticism. You want to try that with me? Try it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Asceticism, right? Asceticism renounces possessions. Asceticism says that possessions are bad. They're terrible. Have nothing because life is better with you having nothing. But Jesus is not saying that. Jesus is vouching for this ordered simplicity that puts our possessions and everything and everyone else in proper perspective, including good things. So let me give you an example. Escaping the rat race of life is a good thing, but it's not the first thing. Redistributing wealth to make sure that everyone has what they need is a good thing, but it's not the first thing. Looking after our planet or marginalized people groups or saving the whales or rescuing puppies are all good things, but they're not the first thing. We could say that they are outflowings of or reactions to the first thing, but they're not the first thing. So where the practice of simplicity begins is this proper ordering of our lives and this world. And what that does is declutter our minds so that we can attend to everything in its proper order. And that's why Jesus points out that where your treasure is, well, guess what? Your heart is going to be there too. Or to put it a little more directly, what you love the most will influence and dictate every other part of your being. And generally, that's a good thing. If things are in order, then you've gained everything. You've lost nothing. But if things are out of order, then we're in danger of losing it all. And that's a really hard thing to talk about, especially in this season, right? Where we have genuinely lost a lot. It's weird to talk about simplicity when so much has been taken from us, and whatever hasn't been taken feels like it's at risk. So then, how do we keep the first thing during COVID? And how do we embody this practice of simplicity when it already feels like life is so lean? I really wonder if it has something to do with us being fully present and appropriately ordering the moment that we find ourselves in. Now, let me try to explain it to you with this. Does anyone remember this?
Here's a pitch on the way, a swing and a belt, left field, way back, Blue Jays win it! The Blue Jays are World Series champions as Joe Carter hits a 3-run home run in the 9th inning, and the Blue Jays have repeated as World Series champions. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.
Touch 'em all, Joe. How many of you remember that? Yeah, of course you remember that, right? 1993. This is a moment of national pride for everyone except for you knuckleheads that made a mess on 8th Street that night. You know who you are, right? A moment of national pride. We remember, even if you weren't a baseball fan, you were excited, you were happy. This was a moment for Canada. I'm not sure where you were in 1993. I was in grade 13 in Ontario. Yes, we needed an extra year. That's how bright we were, right? Yes. And I remember everyone being so excited. One of my buddies actually shaved a Blue Jays symbol in the back of his head and spray painted it red and blue. I mean, there was just hysteria everywhere, and perhaps you felt it as well. We remember those big moments together, right? But those aren't the only moments we remember or felt very present in. We also remember the moments that were very personal to us. I took this picture in 2007. My daughter was 3 and my son was 5. And at that time, my daughter had a very difficult time saying her brother's name. Instead of saying Ethan, she would say Deaton. And every morning she would wake up, and one of the first things she would do would be to start looking for her brother. So she tried to say, Ethan, where are you? And it would come out as, Deaton, yeah, you. And she would just walk around the house in her pajamas, dragging whatever stuffed animal she slept with the night before. I remember that moment. I was there. I can still hear her voice in my ears. It's a very personal moment for me. And for those of you who are parents, especially parents of grown kids, perhaps you remember those things as well. The quirks and the happenings and the sounds and the voices. That was a particular moment in your life. Some of them very personal to you. And then we have other moments that we have shared as a church family. Do any of you remember a scene like this on this very stage? Darlene, you do, right? Absolutely you do. If you don't know what this is, every December we'd pack as many kids as we possibly could onto this stage, and hilarity would ensue. And they would sing and do strange things. And people would laugh and watch and take pictures and genuinely enjoy this moment of children singing Christmas songs. Do you remember that moment or moments like it? I do. Absolutely, I do. Or do you remember ones like this? Doug, this one's for you. Do you remember this moment, Doug? So maybe 3 years ago, Doug and I are like right here in a bathtub in front of 500 people. And I baptized a few people in my life. But when Doug came out of the water, 2 arms in the air, all he kept saying was, yes, yes, yes. And this room is full, and people are cheering, people are clapping, people are laughing, kids are blowing their noisemakers. I remember this moment. Do you remember this moment, Doug? Of course you do. And some of you might remember this moment or moments like it, or perhaps even your own baptism. This is a moment, an important moment that we share in community. Or what about moments like this? This is one of the teams that we sent to Beardy's. Now, I wasn't on this team. I know most of the people in that picture. You may or may not. It doesn't matter. I remember people planned for this. I remember that we had that team on the stage and we prayed for them and sent them out. I remember getting reports back. I remember them coming back and telling the church what had happened. I remember us raising funds. I remember us praying. I remember us as a staff team trying to plan for what we were going to do in the next season at Beardy's. You may or may not have been there, but this is part of your story. This is part of your moment. This is part of you in this church community. So whether you were there or not, you remember this moment. Or you may remember moments like this when we sent teams to Zambia. And the great things about this is that not only have we created moments for ourselves, but this church has created great moments for other people. So many good moments. Good things like youth dance parties that happen in the theater. Now, I wasn't there on that particular night, but I was told that there was definitely a thick musk in the room. Musk was the word that was used. I remember parties like that. Do you remember big church-wide parties? Where in that lobby, there'd be sweaty kids on bouncy castles. People would linger. Some would be barbecuing, and the smoke from the barbecue would come through the lobby and into this room. And I knew when it would hit because people could smell it, and they were looking at their watches saying, Joe, come on, man. The burgers are ready to go. I remember hanging around till 2 or 3 o'clock on some of those Sunday afternoons with many of you, cleaning up, sweeping, putting those tables away, enjoying this moment that we were in. Do you remember the communal moments that we have shared? I'm sure you do. I do. So then there's the question, are we going to do that again? Is that going to happen again? I think so, but I don't know when. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I do know some other things. I do know that it will never be 1993 again. Joe Carter will never touch all those bases like that again. I do know that I'll never go trick-or-treating with a 3- and 5-year-old that belong to me. I do know that I won't be baptizing Doug again, and I can't recreate any of the trips or the parties or the amazing moments or memories or things or lives that were changed through this community. You cannot recreate those moments. We cannot go back to that. But those moments can't be taken away from us. They're not lost. They happened. They were good. And they were all born out of keeping the first thing the first thing. So then, I surrender those moments like I surrender this present moment that we are in into its proper order. I'm trying to make the conscious choice, the conscious effort to simplify, to order things properly, to make the first thing in COVID, especially in COVID. So I say to myself, touch them all, Joe. Touch them all. Every face-to-face conversation you can have, savor that. Touch them all, Joe. Touch them all. Give as much as you can to as many as you can. Touch them all, middle-aged adults and older. Let me challenge you with something right now. Right now. Who cares about saving more money or multiplying assets? Who cares? We're in a moment here. There is a moment to be had here, especially for those who really need what we can provide for them. So my challenge to you is to touch them all. Touch them all. To young parents in the room here this morning, this is my challenge to you. Who cares about getting to the next level of your career, especially now? Who cares? We're in the middle of a moment here. There is a moment to be had with your kids, a special one. So touch them all. Touch them all. To youth or young adults who might be listening, my challenge to you in this moment is this: who cares what everybody else wants you to do with your life? Who cares? You're in the middle of a moment here. This is your chance to figure out what you really want to do, what God is calling you to do, who God has called you to be. Every experience, every adventure, touch them all. Touch them all. Friends, we will never have a moment like this again. I know it feels like it's already been here for forever and that it's going to last for forever, but it won't. These present moments that we're in right now, these are the pictures that we're going to look at in the future. So then, as followers of Jesus, may we release every moment, especially this moment, to its proper place and in its proper order. Because if we let our hearts go there, and if the first thing is our treasure, then our lives will yield good things. And Jesus promises that those good things will last forever. Even the things that come out of this very moment. Because experiencing simplicity's inward reality liberates us outwardly. Speech becomes truthful and honest. Lust for status and position is gone because we no longer need status and position. We cease from showy extravagance, not on the grounds of being unable to afford it, but on the grounds of principle. Our goods become available to others. The spiritual discipline of simplicity is not a lost dream, but a recurrent vision throughout history. It can be recaptured today. It must be. And so, simplicity uncomplicates and untangles our lives so that we can focus in on what really matters. Simplicity loosens the grip on things that we own and the things that we are attached to. Simplicity decompresses our worry about the future. Simplicity brings freedom, and with that freedom comes generosity. Simplicity invites us to enjoy daily pleasures, daily conversations, normal stuff with one another, even in the middle of COVID. And that, my friends, is what ordinary Christians do. We practice simplicity because simplicity makes room for us to love God and to love one another.
Simplicity. It might be the most life-giving practice that we're touching on this season, but at least for me, it is also one of the least explored and most challenging. Because every day we're being formed by mass propaganda that tells us that we are what we have and that security is achieved by the balance in our savings account. We are constantly being promised that happiness and contentment are just on the other side of a new pair of shoes, a new house, or a new piece of technology. Richard Foster puts it this way: we crave things we neither need nor enjoy to impress people we do not like. So, how do we become aware of our craving for things we don't need and don't really enjoy? How do we curb our compulsion to impress people we do not like, or in the case of social media, even know? How do we stop spending our time, money, and energy on things that will never give us what is promised? We practice simplicity. Simplicity at its heart is the lived out belief that the life God promises, a life of depth and abundance, is available to us right now through Jesus and is not dependent on how much or how little we have. And the practice of simplicity puts our attachments to our things back in order, because often our stuff, our jobs, our time, our talents, all can become a barrier to experiencing God's goodness because our energies are misdirected as we try to secure and control what we have instead of receiving it all as a gift. In short, we worship the gift and not the giver. So, the first practical step for living a life of simplicity is practicing gratitude. Practicing gratitude helps us to become aware of the love and provision that already surrounds us. It nurtures trust in the care of God and helps us release our grip on the stuff that we have. It reminds us that every good thing comes from God. So, practice gratitude. Say thanks. Allow your heart to soften by recognizing the good things in your life. Reorient yourself to God's provision. But then practice simplicity, even if you're unsure of it or feel uncomfortable with it, which most of us do because we have a pretty tight grip on our stuff. But the practice of simplicity has the potential to bring freedom. And here are some easy ways to practice simplicity. Number one, and this is so easy, so simple, but so hard. Buy less. Purchase things for their usefulness and not for their prestige or just because they're the latest trend. Budget so that you know where your money is going and so that you can be intentional about not accumulating more stuff than you need in your life. Before you purchase something, ask yourself, does it add value to my life? Does it honor the relationships that I'm trying to build? And how much time, energy, and money is this costing me? And is it worth it? For instance, there's nothing wrong with buying a boat. But if you spend more time worrying about making sure it doesn't get scratched or keeping it clean or storing it, than actually spending time on the lake with your friends and family, it's probably not a simple purchase. I realized a few years ago that although I love clothes and shoes, and that's okay, I was wasting a lot of time, money, and energy on clothes I hardly wore, and I was buying these clothes to impress people I didn't even like. So I made a decision to mostly stick with a uniform. I basically wear a t-shirt, a cardigan, jeans, and boots every day, at least for the 6 months that it's winter here in Saskatchewan. Now, I have too many of those things, so I'm still working on simplicity in this area, but it has saved me a lot of time and energy and money to put boundaries on what clothing I buy, and has helped me enjoy clothes and shoes in a more appropriate and life-giving way. 2, give things away. Give things away that you don't use anymore, but better yet, give something away that you love, but you think might be possessing you instead of you owning it. Or give something away because the joy of the person receiving it is better and more life-giving than keeping it for yourself. A couple of years ago, a friend came for coffee, and she had the most gorgeous teal earrings in. And if you know me, you know I love me some teal. And I told her I loved those earrings, and right then and there, she took them out and handed them over. It was such a genuine act of love and generosity. Thanks, Brookie. Thirdly, enjoy things without buying them. Borrow books from friends and from the library. Camp instead of staying in a hotel. I'm never going to camp instead of staying in a hotel, but maybe you should. Rent and borrow things instead of purchasing them. Go to spaces that no one has to pay to enter or that cost very little. Public spaces are so important in our communities because public spaces embody the principle that we cannot commodify God's world when it's meant to be a gift for everyone to enjoy. Lakefronts, parks, riverbanks, oceans, and mountains should not be available to the people with the most money. They should be available to everyone. So support and enjoy public spaces. Get outside. You guys, this winter, we are going to have to develop a friendship with the outdoors, even if it's a rickety one, because we need to survive it. We're going to have to embrace and accept that balmy weather is minus 15 for the next 5 months, and put our snow pants on and go for a walk. Where else are you gonna go? Enjoy the simple pleasures that don't cost anything. The sparkle of Christmas lights on the snow. It's so beautiful out there right now. The slower pace of winter, a glass of wine or a cup of tea in your warm house, a game night with your family, maximum 5 people. This year, even though Christmas is a complicated holiday for me and I tend to be a bit Scroogey, I'm following a lot of the rest of you by finding joy in the small things and putting my tree up early, because that's how we roll during COVID. Your final practice is to read and maybe even memorize Matthew 6, 28 to 33. Listen to these words. And why do you worry about your clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. And yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If this is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what will we eat? Or what will we drink? Or what will we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father already knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Jesus makes a pretty clear case that simplicity, letting go of the troubles of the world, is the key to a life free of anxiety. These are anxious times, but with them comes the invitation to engage simplicity and to trust again that the life God offers in Jesus is still available, is still abundant, and is still trustworthy, even during COVID 2020.
Thanks for tuning in this week. If you need prayer, reach out to us at prayer@lakeviewchurch.com. And if you're new and you have questions, email us at new@lakeviewchurch.com. And if Lakeview is home for you, and if you believe in what God is up to in and through our church, we ask you would give as you are able at lakeviewchurch.com/give. See you next Sunday.